This is apple juice.
Welcome to another corner conversation. We're talking about 1 John chapter 2, 15 through 17. Our title is
Who's with us today?
Misplaced Your Love. I had to get through the whole title. Parker's with us today. Hey, Parker.
I just like to say that this is apple juice.
And he's excited about it. There was an argument about whether apple juice is for kids or not.
It's not for kids.
Juice is for kids.
Yeah. And there was no winning. There was just a different side.
You're right. Greg did not win.
And neither did you.
Rich is out of town today.
All that matters is I won in my head.
Parker's been interning with us and is speaking in Northeast this week. Super fun this morning. Parker and I got together and talked through what we were talking about on the weekend. And I love when this conversation is selfishly. This is all stuff that I really need to hear and process, and so
like that, yeah.
hopefully it's the same for others. And also one thing that I definitely said, and I definitely feel, is that 1 John it's written so well.
It is written well. I feel like every
Well done.
Well done, John.
Out there that we think is John.
Whichever John you might be.
Yeah. But the concept of misplaced love is, because if you think like the idea that in order to be a good person, you just have to be loving. It's pretty easy to grasp an extreme line of like when somebody has a misplaced love, when somebody is, the reason that I hurt them is because I love them. That might be a little bit misplaced. The reason that I abducted her is because I love her so much.
Definitely.
So that's misplaced. But I think something that I want to really hear from you guys is that back up a ways. So loving selflessly, loving wholeheartedly. Like there is well-placed love, and then there's obviously misplaced love. But where do those lines start to get complicated? Where's the transition happen where love is well-placed and misplaced?
I think when kids are going through a hard time, what is that when they're what do the parents call it when they're
having a fit?
No, tough love. I don't know why I couldn't say that. Tough love. And I think tough love is, I don't know, there's maybe value, but also can be really hard to navigate how to do that well, if that makes sense. I think there's, unhealthy enabling and things like that with parents and kids or anybody. But
yeah, being an enabler is another thing of misplaced love. The reason that I'm doing all these things for you so that you never learn how to do that because I love you so much.
Yeah. And then responding with tough love is all the way that you've loved me until now is suddenly very different. And I don't know, it's it's tough.
I think tough love can be really good, but also can be mean too. And sometimes mean. The reason that I'm being mean to you right now is because I love you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Greg, you explain it well. Is when you talk about love and its selflessness or the selfishness of character. Is that somehow tied into where love becomes misplaced? Is when it becomes about a person?
I don't know. I always think that love is. I really reject the idea that love is a feeling, and so I think a lot of people chase.
It has feeling, but it isn't.
Sure, but I think people chase the feeling of love rather than doing the hard work of choosing to love. And so, what does it mean to love somebody? Well, it usually means that you are elevating their value or their personhood above, or at least to the same level as you view yourself, or should view yourself, I guess, maybe is a better way to say it. But the people you love, it's a choice to say, okay, obviously we put ourselves high because we're all built to survive. It's all about survival. And so when my survival or flourishing is here, love is when we elevate other people's surviving or flourishing to that same level or even higher than ourselves. I don't think you do that for people that you wouldn't say you love.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's probably a good measure is the selflessness of what you do for the needs of those that you say you love.
If a misplaced love is an action that is again elevating you and not them.
Can be one aspect of it.
Yeah.
I think you can also have the misplaced love of elevating somebody too highly.
Mm-hmm.
I think like
misplaced where you're defaming yourself.
Yeah.
The reason that I'm hurting myself is because I love you so much. That's not healthy.
Yeah, it's not a black and white for sure. I think there are things like, I don't know, the way that parents care for their kids isn't always to the benefit of themselves, which is good. But I also do think then you go to like and then we're gonna let them live in our basement until they're 60.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's the same path, but like the extreme version of it.
Yeah, and that points out a reality that love, the carbon copy or the copy of love from one place to another place can also be a part of misplaced love. And so, like, I love you, my daughter, and I'm going to buy all of your food and your clothing, and it's placed so well because you're 6. It's different than I love you, my daughter, I'm going to buy all your food and your clothing, and you're 70.
Or I think an even more extreme example, I will do all that for you because you're my daughter, but some random person or even a friend you wouldn't necessarily do that thing for, even though you love both of them. And so one of the things about love is that it is individualized. Like the way that you show love to different people in your life looks different. There's no formula. You can't hand somebody a formula and say, if you want to show your spouse or your kid or your neighbor that you love them, do these things. Like it's not a checkbox.
A narrative that we're going to bring into this conversation is there are several moments of misplaced love in scripture, but David and Bathsheba is a great one. And in my dislike of David, I think that's okay to say. It's just like I can hear him going, like if I was David's buddy, I can say, dude, I really love her. So all of these things, you're in essence abducting, asserting your power, orchestrating the death of her husband. Dude, but man, I love her.
I did it out of love.
That might be misplaced. Maybe.
I think a little, yeah.
And so to again think about our relationship webs, just thinking about all the different people in our world, and loving people is so important, but loving people the exact same could lead to misplacing of love.
Yeah. And so I think that it amplifies the reality that loving without knowing is actually impossible. So like if you want to love God, you got to know God. If you want to love your neighbor, you should probably get to know him.
Yeah.
If you whatever that means, the depth of love that you can actually give to somebody is probably correlated to the amount that you can actually know them.
Yeah. Well, Parker, you and I were talking about again being well placed this morning, and so how I just thought you had some good thoughts on that about how knowing and loving doesn't just fix it all. How do you choose to do that well? Well, think about just the intentionality of love as opposed to it just.
I mean, I think it goes back to what Greg was saying about it's more of a choice than it is. Like it doesn't just happen. It's hard to love people well, and it's hard to choose the loving thing. I mean, I think like if anything, like this passage, 1 John 2:15-17, like the middle verse about the desires of the flesh and of the eyes, that wouldn't be written in there if that wasn't our tendency.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so like it's hard to choose the right thing.
Yeah. I think it's part of the part of it is quick fix. I think a lot of the things that are misplaced love are done with like quick fix of emotional or whatever. Just feeling good about life and where you're at. Love those things, and then long game of love, the idea that selfless love has huge reward, but very rarely is that reward immediate.
Yeah.
And there's some tandem verses in here that last week we talked about what was in the middle between these two, but 9 through 11 is, if you want to know who's walking in the light, they love people. And then these verses are, if you want to know who's not walking in the light, they love things of the world.
Yeah.
And the thing that I think is easy to do is to go, no. We're just called to love. And that can really miss such a huge thing. We're supposed to love people. Well, again, you can love people in a misplaced way that is not godly and is actually loving the world. And so to hopefully that we can, the intention of John in this writing is to make it complex and go, it is pretty simple. Walking in light and relation, how that is actually played out and done is not by accident. You got to really be intentional in how and who you love.
So I just have a question, like based on what we were just talking about, like when we love people and it can not in a godly way, and then we talk about loving misplaced love, and then because like I think we've talked about this before, just that idea of people have of loving the people, hate the sin, that thing, which can get really complicated and not really very loving. Yeah. What does it look like? Like when we're talking about this, what does it look like to you, for us, for people, or all of us to love people, but in this misplaced way?
Well, I think so. An example of it would be in loving people. Sometimes, like true loving of people, elevating their potential. What was the word that you used?
Value.
Their value. Sometimes loving somebody to elevate their value can be really painful, and actually can entail a bunch of conflict or hard statements, whatever.
Yeah.
And loving somebody that is not godly, not elevating their standing or their value, would be to like, I love you so much that I'm just gonna let this slide.
Yeah.
And Jesus was really bad at letting things slide.
Yeah.
And so we're good at it. But the focus of, again, being intentional in how we love, I think, for me, I can feel like it's so easy to put things off or to ignore, to walk away from things, which is loving the world. I love just keeping things peaceful. And that is not elevating people. It's not doing what I love, making sure that people are comfortable. And those are not requisites of love.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that a lot of those things can lead back to that coveting, or can lead back to selfishness. And these things those are windows into, am I walking in the light? Well, I love like Jesus loved. Am I not walking in the light? I love like this, the selfishness of the world loves. And so I have no idea what you asked, but that's okay.
I think something that's like, it makes it even more complex is some of the misplaced love
isms.
Sure, they can look really right in the moment. Like the quick fix things are like, if there's a conflict and maybe your tendency is like, the best thing to do is to just let it slide.
Yeah.
And it can seem like the best thing to do in the moment, but could really cause a lot of harm.
Yeah. Well, I think part of showing love too is asking not just what is the best thing, because I think by default you go, what's the best thing for me? But asking like, what's the best thing for them? And so like, it's a moment where someone's let you down and they're coming and they're asking forgiveness and trying to reconcile that. And you have a moment where you're like, well, to really love them is to elevate their needs above mine. And so it's sacrificing that side of me that wants to not have this relationship anymore, or sacrificing the side of me that wants to hold it over their head, or like all these things that no one would blame you for doing. But then you go, okay, if I want to show them love, I have to elevate what their need is. And so what is actually best for them? The best for them is that we try again.
There's a grouping of, like, there's a lot of biblical directive and how to have godly love and not love the world. And I mean, we could spend hours just putting these narratives and these stories and these directives onto the table. But the thing that I think is so important in that is that cognitively I can get it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for drawing that picture. Thanks for making that clear, that grace isn't always loving, all that stuff. But there has to be a moment when it's not a moment. You have to say, all right, I'm going to have this moment mentality of how I love. And I don't want to love the world. I want to love as Jesus loved. I want to be intentional, not having misplaced love. And it's not I have resolved to do it and done.
Yeah. No.
It is forever. And that's part of the challenge of sermonizing perspective is you go, oh, man, that was good today. And let me tell you, that is a declaration that it was worthless. Unless it's like, it's got to be good and made and decision changing again and again and again and again. And that's the calling that actually goes back to the first words of this chapter, is that I'm writing this so that you would be perfect and without sin. Wow. And don't forget, we have an advocate and a gracious Jesus who stands for us in our failings.
I think too. Sorry.
No, but that's the both.
Yeah.
Like those things clash together in every one of us. Is that what I do actually does matter?
Yeah.
And because it matters, and I still fail. We have Jesus.
Yeah. I was thinking because I was thinking about that too, and I was like, some of these things we're talking about they're really hard. Like for me, yuck. This is hard, but it's not like it is. Like I think what we keep seeing in John is it's about community, but it is about us internal.
Yeah.
And I feel like the scripture talks, when they talk about love of the world, it is so much about self-reliance, like what we saw in Genesis over and over and over again, and self-preservation, and I'm the center, and so it's like we have to work on that. We have to work on this this immediate humanity. Want to be reliant and safe and preserved and okay and trusting God, and then outflow from that is loving community. There's change inside internally, and there's outflow from that change. And I feel like it's both and. It's not just about our misplaced love towards others, but it is about what's going on in me that I'm doing that. What am I trying to keep safe? What's going on that I'm not trusting, or I'm not trusting in God, or I'm, I just, I think this is a both and moment.
Yeah.
And then we have an advocate to
yes,
when we screw it all up.
So the beauty of this text and us processing it as community, the value of being part of a church community and discipling the relationship and all that stuff, is that it brings and struggling with these things it's bringing the awareness that whatever happens on accident probably isn't going to be nailing it. It's going to be missing.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm very intentional in not losing stuff. I mean, I put my phone in the same pocket. I check before I leave and go, and if a pocket has a zipper, I try to zip it. I try to do that, but I still lose stuff. And a couple of weeks ago, biking here, lost my wallet, and fortunately got an email from the lady who found it on the ground.
Yeah.
And so that's beautiful. But it just so frustrating to me is that I don't want to lose stuff. But what could have helped me in that moment not lose my wallet would have been if I was going, don't lose my wallet right now.
Yeah.
But how could you can't live your life thinking about not losing your wallet. Well, I think this idea of loving others well, loving as Jesus loved, unfortunately, this is a terrible answer, is that you got to think about it.
Yeah.
Can't be just why did I love poorly in that moment? why did I have misplaced love?
Mhm.
It's because you weren't giving it intentionality.
Yeah.
And that's heavy.
It's hard.
And there's grace.
And there's grace.
Yeah. Greg, you want to do the last? You're the final thought guy. Which is gone.
I am still not good at the final thought guy.
Are you a
That's
final?
Rich.
Is that it?
Yeah.
I think
Oh, if I have it, it's going to be long
If I have it. We can just end it like that then.
We just love people well. And we work on our stuff. Because we can't love people well if we're not working on our stuff.
Yeah.
And I think like we've talked a lot about like living in the darkness and living in the light. And I feel like there's intentionality, and like that intentionality is so much about walking with Jesus.
Yeah.
And our relationship with Jesus, like that foundation, like following Jesus' commands. Like, how do we do that if we're not walking in a relationship with Jesus? And it's like this foundation, all these things are important, but like when we get down to it, like how we get there, how we love others better, how we treat people better, how we, walk in light and not darkness is about that relationship with Jesus. And I think that's hard because we don't want to have legalism in it, but I also think that like in relationship with Jesus, it is daily, it's constant.
Yeah. That's
so,
good.
So that's my wrap up.
You did it.
I did, sort of.
Thanks.
We'll see you guys next week.